Hi, I'm Steve Martinez, and I'm your host today for To Protect, brought to you by the Archdiocese of San Antonio. First of all, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and then let you know that we have a really good show for you. I'm really blessed and lucky to have as my guest the co-founder to the Maria Goretti Network, Mr. Miguel Prats. Miguel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, it really is.
And I know you drove a long way. Is it Katy or Tyler?
Katy.
Katy, Texas. So you came all the way from Katy, Texas to be here, so I really thank you. And Miguel is the co-founder, like I said, of the Maria Goretti Network. Let's start off with the basics. What is the Maria Goretti Network?
The Maria Goretti Network is a peer-to-peer, self-help support network for all victims of abuse. Doesn't matter who did it, doesn't matter what form the abuse took. We're here for any victim of abuse, period.
So it's a support group for survivors of victims of abuse. Maria Goretti, who is Maria Goretti?
Maria Goretti was this young girl, uneducated, illiterate, born in Italy in the late 1800s, and 2 months shy of her 12th birthday, when she was only 11 years, 8 months old, a 21-year-old friend of the family attempted to assault her. She died resisting his assault. When she wouldn't submit, he stabbed her 14 times.
Oh my gosh.
With an awl. And it didn't kill her immediately. She lived another 24 hours. This is like in 1902, so the ambulance was a horse-drawn wagon. And, you know, they took her to the hospital, but medicine being, you know, what
exactly,
it was
the
in
time.
those days, they couldn't save her. She was too injured, but she did live for a few hours. And, of course, the priest came to see her. And the most incredible thing about her was that she not only forgave her killer, but she said, I want him to be with me in heaven.
Oh, wow.
So this is a dimension of forgiveness that we don't always see. And I mean, it's a big deal just to forgive somebody, but to really even to love them to the point that you want them to be in heaven with you.
So this young girl, you said 12 years old.
Yeah.
Assaulted, you know, beaten, stabbed, laying on pretty much on her deathbed, says, I forgive him, I want to see him in heaven.
Right.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. And the back part of the story is her killer. So her killer is caught. He gets 30 years in prison. After 6 or 7 years in prison, he has a dream, and Maria Goretti is picking lilies and handing them to him, and they turn into fire as she hands them to him. And she hands him 14 lilies. He stabbed her 14 times.
Wow.
So he has this incredible dream, but it becomes much more than a dream. It becomes the turning point in his life. And he experienced and he fully realized that she forgave him. And if she forgave him, God forgave him. So he started working on forgiving himself, and he turned around. He went from being a not very nice guy to a good guy, admitting the error of his ways. He had always blamed Maria Goretti and said she led him on and it was her fault. You know, blame the victim.
Exactly.
You know, after this mystical experience he had of this dream, he immediately called for the priest, confessed his sins, said, I lied about Maria. It was never her fault. It was all me. And he became a model prisoner. He ended up, you know, still spending another 20 years in prison, but he was released 3 years early for good behavior, and he left, went straight to Maria's mother, Assunta, begged her forgiveness, and of course she said, well, my daughter forgave you, so I do too.
Wow.
She actually adopted him like a son. So the story of Maria and her forgiveness, you know, is just alone is great. But the story of redemption of her killer, Alessandro Serenelli, it's another, I mean, the whole thing is just incredible. Gives us a tremendous example to follow.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about this network itself. How did this get started?
It got started because back in 2002, when I recalled being abused by a priest in St. Louis, Missouri, I was angry. And this was when everything was coming out in Boston. And so the only thing out there for me at the time, Steve, was SNAP, Survivors Network of Those Abused by a Priest. And so I joined up and became very, involved. As time went by, I felt used, that they don't really seem to be encouraging me to get healed. They seem to be wanting me to stay angry and direct that anger towards the church, which wasn't what I needed. And so I was talking to a priest one day, and he said, "Well, you heard about Maria Goretti?" And I said, "No, who is that?" And when he told me the story, I was so moved that, I wasn't real happy at that point with SNAP. And I said, there's got to be a better way. There should be a Catholic version of SNAP. And so we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just took what I learned from SNAP, and we're based on AA, 12-step groups. So we just kind of made a Catholic version of SNAP, open to any victim of abuse, not just victims of priests. My experience, I found out that for every victim of a priest, there was 50 that were abused, usually by a family member or a trusted friend. I had dozens of Baptist victims of clergy abuse calling me because they had nowhere to turn. And so that's how it came to be.
And because you say it relates to, like you said, AA. So explain the typical group. How does the Maria Goretti group go? First of all, you said it's peer run.
Right.
No therapist, no leader, I guess, so to speak. I'm a therapist, and I do groups, and I'm always, I'm the therapist, I run the group. But this one's a peer group.
Right.
So explain that process.
Well, the thing is, we're trying to provide a safe place where victims feel safe because they've been so traumatized. And for that reason, we have closed meetings similar to AA, NA, Al-Anon, any one of those kind of groups. And those meetings are just for survivors and their immediate support personnel. So if we had a therapist who was also a victim, they would be most welcome. Okay, but our philosophy is we don't know what anybody needs to do. What we do know is what's helped us. We get together in a group, everything is confidential, just like in AA. What you hear, you're not supposed to repeat out of the meeting. There's no giving of advice allowed. Somebody makes a comment, it's so easy to say, "Oh, well, you should do this." We don't allow that. It's up to each person to figure out for themselves what they need to do to heal. Of course, Jesus Christ is the center of our is the source of our healing. So, but in our meetings, it's okay to pray. It's okay to talk about Mother Mary and the saints, obviously, and so it's a beautiful Catholic version of any 12-step group you can name.
And it's interesting because you mentioned, the fact that it's Catholic-based, spiritual-based. A lot of support groups that I've seen out there don't have that spiritual component to it. Yet, like as you stated, Jesus-centered. That's inspiration. That's even the saint, Maria Goretti. That's inspiration towards healing.
Right.
And it's interesting because you talk about these peer groups. Everyone's path to healing is different.
Right.
Everyone is different, and having that, listening to people's stories, it's got to be inspirational as a survivor being in this group, listening to people, and then I guess knowing I wasn't the only one going through this.
I'm sure you've seen in your experience, so many people think I'm the only one this has ever happened to. So, number one, when they get around, it may not be the exact same experience. It might have been a nun. It might have been their father, their grandfather. But to meet somebody that went through something similar, it's like, wow, I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. That is so huge for people who've been traumatized to know I'm not alone.
And I think that's huge because I know when I do individual therapy, that's one of the things people always ask me, am I the only one that goes, am I crazy? Am I weak for feeling like this? And I was like, no. So being in this type of environment is a great way to just realize, I'm not the only one. And to understand that their experiences, though individualized to each person,
right,
they're all going through the same thing together.
Right.
And that's, I think, extremely, extremely helpful and magical. One thing I want to let you know, the Maria Goretti Network meets the third Wednesday. It has come to San Antonio, first of all, and will be meeting the third Wednesday of the month at St. Peter, Prince of the Apostles, located at 111 Maria Place. It's right off of Broadway here in San Antonio. So if you or someone you know has been abused, this is a great opportunity to come get that help, to come listen to other people's stories, and help others along the way. I mean, I think that's a great thing. It's that peer group, that support, helping each other move towards that path of healing. So definitely, once again, this is the third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. at St. Peter, Prince of the Apostles. And I think they meet in the cafeteria. Right after this short break, we'll continue our discussion with Miguel Prats, and we continue our discussion about the Maria Goretti Network, and we'll be discussing what this beautiful piece right here and some of a little bit of the story behind it. So we'll see you right after this short break.
Life can challenge us with new problems that can lead to overwhelming stress. These can fracture families, separate, and keep us from having a joyful and productive life. You're not alone. Catholic Consultation Center's mission is to walk this journey with you, using good psychological practice and a spiritual Catholic foundation. Reach out now to Catholic Consultation Center. Let them help you restore hope in your life.
Hi, and welcome back to Protect. I'm your host, Steve Martinez. We've been talking with Miguel Prats, the co-founder to the Maria Goretti Network, discussing which is I guess we'll briefly, tell me what Maria Goretti is once again.
It's a self-help support network for any victim of abuse, no matter who did it, no matter what form of abuse it was.
And I think that's important. I mean, it was created because of sexual abuse. Yet you're saying it's first by clergy sexual abuse, but you're stating you don't have to be a clergy abuse victim to attend these groups. You don't even have to be a sexual abuse victim to attend these groups.
Exactly.
Now, what are some of the rules, I guess, within the Maria Goretti Network? You mentioned, first of all, no advice and, of course, confidentiality, but is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean, well, the main thing is to find your own way. Mm-hmm. Don't depend on anybody else. Depend on God. Depend on the examples the saints give us. Mm. I've mentioned St. Josephine Bakhita, who we just love her as much as St. Maria. People, I want to make this point. People don't have to speak at a meeting.
Oh, that's...
if you want to just come and listen, that's fine. And we always, like, when we start out, we start with prayer. And then we go around and introduce ourselves. Some people have been known to use fake names. That's fine. You don't have to give a name. You don't even have to say anything. But we usually say something like, "Hi, I'm Miguel. I'm a survivor of clergy abuse. I'm a survivor of abuse by non-clergy, and I'm a hugger." Mm-hmm. Because some people, like Latinos, we're huggers, but not people everyone. That have been, exactly. Traumatized, don't like people touching them. So, we kind of try to find out where everybody's at, and then the co-leader will maybe throw a thought out for the meeting, and we'll check in, And here's what is really different about the Maria Goretti Network meetings. The men and the women separate. Because so many women have been abused by men, sometimes they are not, they don't feel free to let it all out if guys are there. So when we separate, then the ladies can really be honest and let it all out. And then the guys and the girls get back together. And then we talk about ways to forgive. And we have little meeting guides, and there's some things listed in there. And we'll talk about ways to forgive. And somebody might pick out number 8 or number 5 and say, I'm attracted to this one, and here's why. And so by sharing something that is helping us, has helped us, will help us, we hope that somebody will pick up something that they can take home with them.
Now, one of the big topics, which you've been mentioning as well as when even discussing St. Maria Goretti, forgiveness. Is it important for the survivor to forgive the abuser?
It's critical. It's the key. It's the key. And yet it's so hard.
Yes.
But the thing is, even if you don't have it within you to forgive, if you simply ask the Lord, or ask Mother Mary, or St. Maria, or, if you just ask that you be given the grace to try to begin to forgive, it starts the process, and Maria Goretti Network is about 2 things, recovery and forgiveness. We find you really, really can't recover without that forgiveness. So even if you can't really forgive, if you just hope to forgive, if you wish to forgive, that's a start, and baby steps. Okay,
that's great, because some survivors aren't, that's out of the question. So you would definitely, even if they're not there, because that's definitely, to get there, it takes, like you said, steps. So even someone who's maybe brand new to this, who still has that anger, maybe hatred towards the abuser, they should still attend this
They should still come to the meetings, because I'll tell you the truth, the Holy Spirit is just at every meeting I've ever been in. We've been in existence over 11 years. I've been to hundreds of meetings. The Holy Spirit's at every one of them. And when people who are traumatized and angry and mad and when they get around other people that used to be mad and angry like them, they see the change. And when people give witness and testimony, it just can't help but rub off on them.
Wow.
And it's just the coolest thing. It's so humbling, and it just makes you so full of gratitude to see yourself, the anger lessening. And like me, I used to, Steve, when I met you years ago, I was angry. I was angry with the bishops of the church. I'm so happy now. I literally, I just feel like I'm on cloud 9 every day. I have a history of drugs and alcohol abuse. Don't need it anymore. I'm on a natural high, and it's.
So you're making me feel good. It's contagious.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That miracles happen at Maria Goretti Network meetings when you can take somebody who's severely traumatized because maybe their father or grandfather abused them, and they're full of hate, and when you see them eventually forgiving their abuser, wow, it's just like it's a miracle.
Yes, that is a miracle.
And to be in the presence of, maybe it hadn't happened to you yet, but you can feel it happen to that person. It works. It's like AA, they say, keep coming back, it works. Well, what we do, it works. Yeah, you got to come to the meetings though. And you got to work on it. You got to work on it in between meetings, because we only meet generally once a month.
Yes.
But we give handouts, we make suggestions, we direct people to look at books like my Peace I Give You by Don Eden. You know, it's miracles take place.
That's beautiful to hear. Like I said, it's uplifting. Like listening to you, I feel it's that Holy Spirit coming into play, making miracles. Now, you mentioned in the earlier immediate support. I guess their family members. One thing, working individually with individuals, with survivors that come in, they often say, my spouse doesn't understand. My spouse, get over it, move on, those kind of things. Right. Are spouses or these support systems invited to these groups as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we especially want the spouse that doesn't understand why their spouse can't get over it and move on. We especially want them to come because they need to be healed too.
Yes.
I mean, they're a secondary victim. The family usually of a victim is victimized as well.
Yes.
I mean, this stuff destroys families. And so, yes, we want spouses especially to come to meetings, and especially if they don't get it and don't. It's hard to understand what this does to you. We have people that come that were never touched. They were verbally abused by their parents growing up, and it destroyed them.
Yes.
And we find that abuse, it destroys souls, which in turn, a lot of times, unfortunately, leads to people abusing alcohol and drugs because they don't want to feel anything.
Exactly.
That was the case with me. I was hurting. I didn't understand why I was hurting. I didn't know what was going on. I just didn't want to feel. And so, we encourage. Sometimes people are alone and they just have a friend that cares about them and helps them. They're welcome to come to meetings.
Excellent.
Right. And we can always have open meetings where anybody and everybody can come. Yeah.
Before we even continue, let's talk about this beautiful thing sitting here. Now, I know it may be hard to see, but there's something in the middle. What exactly is that?
That little black dot is a little piece of bone from St. Maria Goretti herself.
Really?
Really. It's an actual piece of her bone.
And you stated that her relics were actually touring the United States, correct?
There's a thing going on right now called the Pilgrimage of Mercy. If you go to mariagoretti.com, and that's GORETTI.com, you can see the schedule where she'll be going. I believe she's in Oklahoma right now.
And she recently just left Houston.
Just went to 3 different parishes in Houston.
Incredible.
She was in Tyler, Texas, where we have a chapter. So, we're like, we don't believe in coincidence. Coincidence for us is when God chooses to remain anonymous. So this little piece of bone was given to Bishop Alvaro Corrada, who's down in Puerto Rico now, when he became a priest on July 6th, which happens to be the feast day of Maria Goretti. So when I proposed the creation of a new group, Maria Goretti Network, to Father Gavin Vaverick, the promoter of justice for the Diocese of Tyler, and Bishop Corrada, I didn't know he had been ordained on Maria Goretti's feast day. They knew, so needless to say, they kind of jumped like, wow.
No
this isn't
incredible.
Right. And that was just one of many signs we've been given that this is something the Lord wants. It's so needed. We have, unfortunately, with the progress of the internet, we have a problem with pornography.
Yes.
It's a huge problem. And the devaluation of women and the objectification of women, it's a huge problem. So just to deal with sexual abuse, it's become an epidemic.
Yes. Now, if people wanted more information about the Maria Goretti Network, who could they contact?
Well, number one, they can go to the website, which is mgoretti,
Okay.
Okay, so we have a website there, but we also have a very nice Facebook page,
Yes.
which is updated usually twice a day, every day. And so you can go there just to get little lifts, encouragement, little attaboys, sometimes pointers on things to think about. We find wisdom in many places. We don't care if it's Pastor Joel Osteen of Lakewood or Gandhi or Buddha. You know, there's wisdom in other religions, in other places.
Definitely. So it's definitely, bringing that word out. So once again, before we end today's show, I just want to let everyone know that the group meets every third Wednesday of the month at St. Peter, Prince of the Apostles, which is located at 111 Badia Place. So if you have any more questions, you can also give myself a call at 734-7786. I thank you so much for joining us today on To Protect, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.